Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending this session. We have a very informative discussion coming up on the road to network transformation. So we've invited an influential and diverse panel to help us with this discussion, and I'd like to start by having each individual say who they are and what their job is and why they're involved in MEF. So we'll start here with Bart.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Dan. My name is Bart Oskam. I'm the CTO of Eurofiber. Maybe a minute to introduce the company to you. I could imagine that you're not all familiar with it. We are a B2B and wholesale fiber-based operator in the Netherlands and in the Benelux. We own and operate a very densely deployed fiber network in that geography. It's about 30,000 kilometers of fiber deployed, 20,000 locations on net. And for your reference, it's roughly the size of the state of New York. So it's really densely deployed into the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. We serve all sectors of the economy, like businesses, of course, but also schools, hospitals, municipalities, smart cities, and wholesale customers with fiber backhaul to the antenna. And it's an open infrastructure, so we provide only connectivity services like dark fiber, wavelength, carrier Ethernet, and IP. So it's a bandwidth infrastructure only company, so to speak. And getting to your question on MEF, so if you're a provider of one of the raw materials of the digital society in terms of digital bandwidth infrastructure, then standardization, interoperability, and seamless service integration are key to our business model. So if we are capable of adhering to the standards of MEF in terms of standardization to enable interoperability, that simply accelerates our business. It's at the core of our business, so to speak.
Thank you.
David. I'm David Hughes, PCCW Global. PCCW Global is a traditional carrier. We do voice services, fiber services, IP layer 3 services, MPLS VPNs, a whole spectrum of value-added services on top of that. How we see MEF sort of playing into the picture is bilateral agreements have always sort of been the fuel for what makes telcos work. It's the whole thing behind the telco industry. We can't do anything alone. Telcos have always been very interdependent upon each other. And as we move forward into more digital services, that interdependence becomes a little bit more complicated, and it's nice to have an organization like MEF to help sort of define some standard terminology, if nothing else, so that we can all speak the same language and keep those bilateral agreements moving forward.
Great. Thank you. Dave.
Yeah, my name is Dave Stehlin. I'm the General Manager of Lifecycle Service Assurance segment at Spirent. Spirent's a long-standing test and measurement company, and a couple years ago we put together the assets of 4 previously independent business units to help us solve the problem of enabling and accelerating network automation. So our focus is taking our very powerful service assurance platform, slicing it up into microservices, creating small virtual test agents that can reside basically anywhere, feeding them into our controller, feeding into network orchestration, and then enriching the analytics and helping service providers, like I said, enable and automate much more quickly.
Thank you. Sandeep.
I'm Sandeep Raina. I'm Product Marketing Director at InfoVista for Service Assurance. InfoVista is a company which deals with network visibility and control solutions. So we offer a range of solutions from network planning to network optimization into service assurance, which I deal with. And also we have SD-WAN solutions with application intelligence. So essentially it covers a broad range of products.
And what has brought you to MEF?
So InfoVista has a long history of association with MEF. We have contributed to the Carrier Ethernet 2.0 specifications actively with MEF. Also contributions to the third network white paper, for example. And right now we're tracking all the developments at MEF with respect to LSO, because from a service assurance angle, this has a very key role to play.
Thank you. So we are talking about network transformation. We are not talking about network evolution. We're not talking about, gee, we can now go from 100 gigabit Ethernet to 200 gigabit or 400 gigabit Ethernet. We're not talking about 72 wavelengths on a fiber going to 144 on a fiber. We're talking about more than that. So I would like to ask each of you, what network transformation means to you, and in your company or with your customers, what's actually driving it. I want to start with David Hughes from PCCW Global. You have a long history of providing all these different services with lots of different network components. What makes network transformation different from network evolution?
Well, you know, before we talk about network transformation, it's really a business transformation in that, you know, customers are expecting things with a little bit quicker delivery than they're used to getting. And in the past, when we would define products, there would be a fairly long window on which to recover the investment cost. You know, so a product might live 10, 15 years and still generate good revenue. Well, now maybe because of the speed, the acceleration of new technologies and disruptive technologies, maybe those products don't live as long, right? And so you have to be careful how you invest money into building products and how much time you take to build and deliver those products, because you may miss a window. You may miss an inflection point. And so to sort of respond to those business drivers, we got to kind of think the network piece of it to be able to respond to that. And so for me, the network transformation is probably more one of we used to be a world in telco where everything was protocol driven. You had a new networking problem, you needed a new protocol. You'd sit back on the riverside and wait for the standard to be developed. Then it would get to the hardware vendors and they would actually implement it in hardware. And then you would get your new protocol and you could build your products and deliver them. It takes too long, right? So we're moving more from protocols to more of an API interface and more of a software-based interface. And that's sort of the transformation, is how do we make networks go kind of from a hardware world where there's still very much a hardware world and always will be, well, not always, but for a very long time, into more of that software-based, looks like software and is driven more by APIs and less by protocol.
All right, so Bart, as David says, networking is becoming more software-based than hardware-based. We will always need transmission to get things from place to another until we have teleportation, and I'm not counting my calendar for that. So in your business, in Eurofiber, where does this software transformation take place, and how do you view network transformation, maybe in different ways from the way David just described?
Well, I think there are two main trends in the ecosystem that we operate in that drives network transformation for Eurofiber. One of them being cloudification, so virtually everything becoming virtual, real-time, on-demand, web-based. And the properties of our proposition don't change fundamentally. So it's still a strain of fiber, physical strain of fiber with a bandwidth infrastructure deployed on top. But the way we bring that service to market needs to keep pace with this cloudification trend. So we need to stay in sync with that development, and that means that the way we bring our basic connectivity products to market gets all kind of cloud properties in terms of being agile, being real-time, being on-demand, etc. So that's one trend. The other being total connectivity, so everything becoming connected to everything, driven by 5G, by IoT, by fixed mobile convergence. So we need to make sure that our fiber infrastructure integrates seamlessly with all those other access technologies in order to be able to provide end-to-end connectivity to our customers and to build this network as a platform. And this requires orchestration and all the stuff that we're working on here in MEF. So that's the other trend that's actually driving network transformation with us. And then the third very relevant development is that our wholesale customers and our international wholesale customers are investing heavily in softwareization and automation. And you don't want to be the weakest link in a end-to-end chain of multi-operator provisioned, automatically provisioned LAN. You don't want to be the one with the Excel sheet. So for us to be able to provide at least the same level of automation and agility as our wholesale operators and customers require from us is crucial. So those would be the three main drivers for us. Mm-hmm.
Sandeep, as you look at providing better assurance for your customers, and as they're getting more involved in softwareizing their operations and their networks, what does that imply as the impact on your business, and how do you interpret network transformation?
I think service assurance in general has a key role to play in supporting the transformation. Because the transformation is happening at the services level, as you mentioned, at the business level. It's got a direct relationship to what's happening to the network. So your network is moving away from the physical to the virtualized, and cloudified, and so on. And when that happens, you need to manage that transition. You still need to keep an eye on the performance, the capabilities, and the service level that you're offering to your customers. So your SLAs should not get impacted. Your performance should not be impacted in this hybrid environment. So you need a service assurance system to ensure that both parts of the network are working in tandem, in conjunction, and being able to produce the same quality as you were getting before you started your virtualization. And this period is very long. It's going to be 5 to 10 years before it kind of settles down into a totally new form. And that's where you need the automation, the speed and agility you were talking about, David. You need to manage that through the service assurance system, through an orchestrator system. Without that, you would have difficulties in actually implementing these business plans.
So as services move to be more subscription-based, on-demand-based, temporary, how is that affecting service assurance?
I mean, in terms of how we deploy them, or in terms of how we actually they get used?
How does that change your business?
It would change the business, of course, because if everything is moving towards an on-demand nature in general, and here the whole cloud system is on subscription, on the usage, ultimately, I can't say for what we're doing right now, but ultimately this is where the whole industry would move.
Does service assurance become subscription-based the way the services are, or is it on a different kind of time scale?
Well, this needs to be seen. I think over the next couple of years, there would be definitely changes.
Maybe I can add to that.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a blend. On one hand, I think service providers like to understand their cost structure. And if it's subscription-based things and consumption-based, things can get a little bit out of control. And CFOs don't like that, number one. Number two, they don't like it if a subscription ended and now I'm not covered anymore because of some mistake. So there's always that issue. But on the flip side, because everything's moving to the cloud, it makes subscription-based services much easier. And in fact, selling service assurance to enterprises is another option. Enterprises are much more comfortable with subscription-based services. So that's something that could happen as well.
Go ahead.
And as a carrier, because again, we don't really know necessarily, we don't have so much time to run a product for 10 years. If I have to tool up a service assurance piece, how do I know my product's even going to be around long enough to recover that investment? So if you use subscription-based services, it helps kind of manage that risk, because I don't have to put money in up front. I kind of can parse it out based on the revenue. So it's I can see it moving both ways.
And in this new virtual world, you have any-to-any changing all the time. So I think it makes the need for service assurance that much more important, because the competition level is only going up. The customer expectation level is only going up. So how do you ensure that you're providing the quality of service that you signed up for? How will you assure that you're providing that promise to your customer? It's really important.
And because of the fan-in nature, because we're kind of decoupling different parts of the stack, there's a huge correlation problem that has to happen, because you may have several applications experiencing a problem that kind of ties back to one thing in infrastructure. And they may not know it, and you may not know it, and you may have a lot of people chasing their tails for a while till they come to that correlation, and service assurance can kind of help dial in where the problem is.
Right.
It becomes even more critical than it is today.
That's right. And I think you have that, you've always had that gap between the lab and the operating network. As things happen much more quickly, automating the activity from the lab and feeding it into the production network also has to happen much more quickly.
So Dave Stehlin, your title alone tells me something about transformation that's gone on in Spirent. It used to be you would test boxes, and then you would test protocols. Now you're talking about lifecycle service assurance, so many more things in software. What has that done to the testing business?
Yeah, I think people realize that while there will be some degree of hardware around for a long period of time, that's fading pretty quickly. Things are definitely becoming more software-based, they're becoming more microservice-based. Service providers want to be able to orchestrate a test gets run, and then it can disappear. For example, we're helping service providers with service activation. So they turn up a new customer, they want to run a service assurance test to make sure it was turned up properly. They create a birth certificate, it goes into the network in the system. And then if there's a problem, you can always fall back on that reference point to help you with both change management, as you have software upgrades in the network over time, as well as fault isolate. So it all ties together from the lab to the onboarding to the operating.
So both Sandeep and Dave, now you're involved in service assurance, and we've had a lot of discussion, very positive this week, about the Sonata interface. We just released the first developer version of the specification, along with an SDK, which is open source software. We're not into software distribution. So enabling some customer to request a service for now, and an operator alone or with a partner operator across Sonata gets that service, it's run, and then it can be taken down. There's some demos in the POCs about that. Where does your business come into these short-term, short-lived, temporary services?
You want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So yeah, Sonata is a really great step forward. Spirent's been involved in helping bring that out. Because we're moving into this software world, you're going to get services instantiated and torn down much more quickly. You're going to have customers that want to have access and understand what's going on in their network. So customer portals and things of that sort are going to be created. And in fact, customers may want to run some tests on their own. And you can build in a software-based environment the ability to do that, where they can run a test between a couple different points and understand what the quality of that link, and understand, do I want to route my traffic that way? So we're all becoming more and more comfortable with controlling what goes on in our own personal digital worlds. I think the IT departments at enterprises, et cetera, are also going in that direction.
So Bart, as you're softwareizing your network, what is your experience so far? What is your plan about where you run this software-based control management and orchestration? How much are you using, for example, private clouds or public clouds for the softwareization, which sort of changes how you're running your network?
Yeah, so the level of softwareization in our network itself is still quite limited, and we're working very hard now to develop this roadmap for our plan. But this is not a trivial exercise, because in my experience so far, it's not so much about a network transformation being a technology challenge, but it's a management challenge. Because, well, the network transformation follows business transformation, follows organizational transformation. So I'm not sure who of you are familiar with Martech's law, but it actually says that the technology evolves exponentially fast, and organizations tend to change logarithmically slow. So the gap between what technology can deliver and what organization can absorb actually gets bigger over time. And this is particularly frustrating. I'm sure many of you share this type of frustration, that you see the potential of technology, but you just get frustrated because you can't implement it fast enough. And then, well, one way of coping this, of course, would be by making your organization more agile and start DevOps type of work. But that in itself is a huge transformation, because, well, you're changing roles, responsibilities in the company. Agile learning curves are long and bumpy. And yeah, injecting software type of thinking and working into a static network type of legacy environment is particularly challenging. So I would say in this roadmap, technology is the least of our worries. It's about how do we manage the transition from an organizational standpoint, which is particularly challenging. Yeah. And then there is the abundance of options, of technologies that you could choose from. Timing, am I going to step in now whilst the technology is still quite immature, or am I going to wait a bit? But if I'm going to wait, is it maybe going to take too long? So that's quite a challenge as well. So in general, I would say, and then there is the part of killing your darlings, which is sometimes limiting your ability to change, because yeah, it takes some courage to actually change your business model into ways that's going to cannibalize your traditional business. Mm-hmm. which is, in our case, well, maybe if we've got time, I can give you an example from our own experience where this is actually creating substantial debate within the company in terms of, well, I understand where we're going, but are we aware of the fact that we're potentially going to kill our darlings?
Mm-hmm. Well, the dilemma is always, if I don't kill my own darlings, my competitors will.
Exactly.
This is sort of a mantra we live to up in Silicon Valley where I reside. Always staying ahead of the competitors, and in fact it turns your legacy products into your own competition.
Yep,
That's right.
So David Hughes, say a little bit about where software and the cloud play into the way you manage things in PCCW and how that's sort of changed over time and where you see that going.
Well, the initial waves, it was pretty straightforward. We used to do everything on bare metal servers, and we moved to virtualization. And so we have a few data centers around the globe that do all the kind of command and control and management of the network, run all the various service pieces. And now what we're realizing is you can't really do everything centrally. Some things really need to kind of be pushed out locally. And so now we're working to sort of kind of redefine that architecture of how to let, I guess we refer to them as kind of like edge islands, sort of manage themselves and yet be able to coordinate back centrally to know how to adjust, because they don't have a full picture. They don't necessarily know there's a problem in Chicago and they get to, I need to route. And protocols take care of some of that. We haven't really pushed segment routing out yet, but that's on our 2019 list of things to do. We believe that'll help. So it's really, it hasn't revolutionized or transformed us really, because cloud is sort of just, it's kind of like just computing. It really comes back more to the organizational challenges, kind of to go around that to let everybody else embrace it and to sort of change the mindset, because as you work more in a cloud native mode, the way you define products becomes a little bit different. What the products actually are a little bit different. Maybe the things you're working on, you need to be a little bit more forward thinking. Instead of thinking just about the end of the quarter or the end of the year, you also need to consider, what you're going to be doing in 2 years, 3 years. That disrupt yourself or be disrupted mentality, right? You have to always be looking for disruption points. And so we spend a lot of time doing that, and that leads to a lot of confusion potentially inside of an organization. And people sometimes may have trouble focusing on what they're supposed to be doing, don't even know what they're supposed to be doing. So what we did internally is we adopted an agile mindset, and we picked the scaled agile framework for that, mainly because it's sort of open source agile framework. It's publicly available. You can get all the documentation. And so we've sort of transforming our company. In fact, my group moved out of the network group into a software group, right? And so now I work for a software group. And we are starting, the transformation of agile. We're even agile our physical deployments, building cross-functional teams and stopping that serial gated process, which takes forever. And so the cloud mindset is sort of trickling down into all the processes and sort of transforming us culturally and organizationally in how we do work.
How is this impacting your skill base and the skills that you need?
Well, it's, fortunately, most tech people are always kind of happy to evolve their skill sets anyway. And if they're not, then they're probably in the wrong business. So, engineers are embracing the change, generally speaking, because we're asking them not to be a command line guy now. Now, maybe you might want to learn some Ansible. Maybe you'll pick up a little Python. And so what we're trying to do with the engineers and the staff is make them more T-shaped. So that, or another term might be generalizing specialists, so that they have deep knowledge of a particular skill, but they have a broad range of skills. Maybe they know, networking really well, also maybe know databases or a little scripting. Or if you're a logistics person, maybe you know logistics really well, but maybe you might pick up some project management and financial, skills. And so that you get a bunch of people working on a project together. If one's out, you don't have to wait till they come back, right? And so through these T-shaped people, you get a little bit more velocity on how you move things forward, because people now can do multiple things.
And out of interest, David, looking at these T-shaped people in your company, in general, did you evolve and develop your existing staff to become more broadly oriented, or did you largely depend on recruiting new people?
Well, we focused on the existing people first because it's a very competitive market to go out and you can't really, because you still need to take care of the legacy business or the mainstream business, right? You really need to focus on the existing resources and get them, support them, mentor them, give them training. We sent all the engineers to Python training, whether they wanted to go or not, right? And maybe some of them picked it up, maybe some of them don't, but you start learning who likes what skill, right? And so you try to tailor the individual's role to what they're good at, as opposed to just trying to force fit them into a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't work. And then you augment through through new hires. When you go to hire new people, now you start looking for a different type of skill sets, maybe, right? But you can't. You gotta stay invested in the people who got you there.
Yeah.
One of the challenges we've seen with the Agile process, and we do Agile as well, and we do it with some of our customers, but not all, is if you're having 2 or 3 week releases, sometimes those features are not fully baked in that short period of time. And you want to be careful to ensure that you have that same expectation level with a service provider customer as compared to what they've done in the past, where they don't want it until it's completely generally available, ready to go. Because in a 2 or 3 week period, you can't do complete regression testing and all that.
Feature
so you
flags.
have to have that relationship, and it's a cultural change that has to occur.
In our own sprint cycles, right, we basically use feature flags just to kind of mask it out until so you're pushing the code and the code can be deployed.
That's right.
Right? Yep. And then when it's fully baked, then you take the feature flag off and it goes live.
Yep.
And so, Dave Stehlin, what has been the impact on the personnel landscape inside Spire as a result of this transformation process?
Yeah, it's the number of people that have cloud native experience and really understand how things work in the cloud, want to work in an agile environment. There aren't too many of those around. So we certainly have spent a lot of time retraining our team, and they're very excited about it because engineers like to develop new things and they like to be on the cutting edge, which is great. But there's also that cultural change. I'm not going to get beat up if I don't do it right the first time. So you have to have that management down approach of supporting people that make mistakes if their head was in the right place doing so. But hiring people is a big challenge that have that, not only the experience level, but the right attitude that is now being drawn out by things happening much more quickly and being much more flexible.
So Sandeep, to keep services assured at a guaranteed level, you have to know how they're performing.
Yes.
So you have to understand the state of the network, and you have to probably understand something about the quality of experience of the users or the applications. So this suggests to me that you have to gather data from, I say the network, but it could include the applications and the servers and the databases, and I'm not sure what all else. What are you having to do with that, and what are your thoughts on applying AI and machine learning to turn data into information?
Eventually, AI and machine learning will be the basis of all analytics that we produce in a service assurance system. There's absolutely no going away from that. The reason being, you cannot have static reports anymore. You cannot have reports in time. You have to have trends, patterns, and you need to have actions taken on those reportings, because that will feed into your orchestrator to correct your network proactively. You will be making predictions through those kind of machine learning analytics, and those predictions will help you with CapEx planning, for example, with capacity planning, better utilization of your investments, but also it will help you monetize some of that data. So in tomorrow's world, when you have IoT providers and IoT services that you're offering, they may want to actually see how are these services doing in the environment, which customers are using. So you'll have a lot of network related analytics which will feed into these businesses, into these enterprises. And we do see an evolution there very clearly, that machine learning has a very clear path to play there, and then a role to play there, and then AI when that happens. AI is a little way off.
Yeah, I would add that exactly what he was saying, that being more proactive is critical to success, because as we've been saying, the customer expectation level is way up. One of the things that we help with, we focus on customer experience assurance. So it's what's the experience from the customer into the network, both at the service layer, and then what are the underlying issues associated with the network itself. And if you can identify those things before they scale, so for example, if a cell tower, one of the antennas at a cell tower is slightly out of whack, if you can find that before rush hour, you can fix that problem. We call it a micro outage, and our customers can find those proactively, make the adjustments before it becomes a big problem. So we're very focused on that customer experience.
This might be either a stupid or a controversial question for Dave Stehlin and Sandeep, but as you instrument the network and you measure all the stuff, to what degree do your companies own the data versus the operators, your customers, owning the data?
So what should be the division of the usage of data?
Well, where is that going? What do you want to do with it?
I think the operator generates the data. That's very clear. It's their network. But to understand it and to make it intelligent or to derive value from it is our job. Because we have the tools or we have the systems in place which acquire this information quickly, let's say through faster mechanisms, using telemetry and all those things. You can now produce more real-time information for them. It's for their use, right? So they could use it for their own performance improvement of the network, or they could use it to monetize their services. So they could be selling this information off. I mean, this is just an idea.
Yes, I agree.
They could actually be giving this out to third parties to see how they could develop better services. If these are powerful analytics, they are machine learning based, they have a lot of value in them. And this is how they could utilize those services. And this is how I see the division between us and them.
Yeah, and we don't own the data. We help our customers get more value out of that data. So whether it's coming from a network element and telemetry-wise, whether it's coming from a physical probe that's in the network, or whether it's coming from a synthetic test that we may run through our system because we're very involved in active test, the combination of those things give a really good view for our customer so that they can run their network more efficiently and hopefully increase their revenue.
I think it's even debatable if the data will belong to the operator in the end. Because in the end, the end user is generating all the information which provides the intelligence to manage your network. I think there's a trend that ownership of data is going to be personalized in the long run. So I think in the end game, the data will belong to the customer, and the customer will allow the operator to use that data and analyze it, but only if it's explicitly allowed and not per se. I think that's the way we're heading in terms of data ownership on network data.
So we basically build context on top of their data. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Right? So it's contextualizing the data for the operator.
Yeah, it's obviously the data lakes are becoming so big. You have to enrich the data so you can better understand where the problems are, finding that needle in a haystack. And that's the value that we try to bring.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing that there are new business prospects on the horizon here for you folks or other parties. And so, Bart, I'd like to ask you, we heard this week, and I've heard a few weeks ago in The Hague, from Geert van der Straten from Microsoft IT in Belgium, about the value of connectivity, where he says nearly all of our connectivity needs for Microsoft can be met by the internet. And if you as an operator want to charge me more for something, it better provide more value than just pure connectivity. So as you see the possibility of taking separate software, analytics, using third parties, monetizing your infrastructure in some other way, where do you see this going for Eurofiber?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Dan. So maybe I can answer the question by an example. So what we did in the Netherlands is interconnect 50 data centers, which all have local cloud providers present in their facilities. In our geography, the cloud market is, of course, the big ones are there, but it's also very fragmented amongst relatively small private cloud providers. And then from scratch, we built a service on top of the fiber grid that's already there, of course, in our case. We used a team which was not natively the Eurofiber guys. We just actually acquired a small company which had very, very bright software programmers in it. And they built this platform from scratch. And this is a connectivity platform which has properties of a cloud service. So it's real time, it's on a portal, You can scale up and scale down in whenever you want. It's one-day contracts, so you can terminate the contract tomorrow and start a new contract the next day. So this is, in my view, how connectivity could evolve in a cloudified ecosystem, where the way connectivity is being provisioned has a lot more properties of how a cloud service is actually provisioned. And this is how you can add value as an operator.
David Hughes, what do you think about that?
Yeah, you know, we used to compete basically on price and quality, right? You'd either be the cheapest guy or you'd be the best guy. Maybe you'd hit a compromise. You know, that's not how we compete anymore as carriers. Now we're basically competing based on design. And so who can put the best interface in front of the customer to consume the network assets by either incorporating it into their native DevOps or helping them navigate a long tail of options so that it's very simple for them to consume network services. And that's really where the kind of the future lies, is it's not a matter of price or quality more, because everything's pretty much equal across all carriers. So there's, what the Microsoft guy said is spot on. I would, you know, you got to put something in front of them that makes their life better, that enriches their consumption of network services, that provide some higher value than just simply connecting two pipes together. You know, they need more than just plumbers, right?
So we've talked about network transformation and service transformation and business transformation. And when I think about how MEF tries to help this industry, we've got this framework, MEF 3.0. It's got the quadrants. If I try to map that to these things, I could sort of say, well, network transformation, those are our north-south LSO APIs. Business transformation, those are our east-west LSO APIs. And that's our service transformation. Business transformation is the skills certification programs we have to help train the employees that you have to master carry Ethernet, SDN, NFV, cloud, and these advanced technologies. But that's a nice simplified or simplistic mapping in my view. So I'd like to turn it over to you to tell me and tell us in MEF, what can we do more and better to help you make this journey successfully to grow your business? Let me start with Sandeep.
Well, obviously, MEF has a very clear mandate, and it works within a certain framework. And from a service assurance angle, I think the role that MEF has in the future, in the current environment, is solving some of these problems that we have. Operators, and you can confirm that, come back saying, yes, it's good to talk about agile services, agile deployments, but then how are we tracking that? Is that being monitored, and is it also being orchestrated in real time? So is it being closed loop optimized or closed loop automated? These are some of the terms we're talking about now. It essentially really means if I'm raising a problem, a flag, is it being corrected? And if it's being corrected, is it being tracked? And how fast is that whole cycle happening? So I think the role here is to identify the various components here, which can tie it all together. It's a little loose still in the industry. I don't think it's all very clearly done, and that's where it needs to come together. Other than that, I think there are various levels at which those loops operate. So a network fault or network problem or an SLA problem is being reported. It'll track its own little cycle or its own little loop. A business problem should have its own loop to track. So all these loops need to be, again, combined at a higher level to make sure that it all works in harmony in that sense. So the business, the network, and the service level, they kind of work together. So the application and the service and the network level work together.
So we have, abstracted these network components from the business support function and the orchestration and the service orchestration function, and resource management and elements, and then the customer and the partner. Have we abstracted the right things to be able to do this? And on either side of one of these abstracted interfaces or APIs, we're not religious about how you can implement that, because we want technology to move quickly and have the widest choice for you to implement. Is there some construct we're missing to enable what you have just described, Sandeep?
No, I don't have the details in terms of what exactly might be missing there, and this would need some study and understanding, but I'm generally remarking on what I'm hearing from the industry, from customers, and from vendors like us, who say that yes, because there are multiple standards out there, and APIs have their own standards, in so many flavors, and some people do their own APIs as well. So this needs to come together in a way that it solves a particular use case, and specific to closed loop I'm talking about here. Closed loop at network level, closed loop at service level, and then closed loop at a business level. I think these are some of the gaps that we need to complete.
Okay, thank you. Dave Stehlin, what do you think? What can MEF do more?
Yeah, well, I think there are very few organizations in our industry where service providers, operators, and equipment suppliers and services suppliers get together to solve a common problem. I mean, that doesn't happen much anymore. It's typically vendors trying to sell something to a service provider, right? Which at the end of the day, it keeps things happening. But when we're solving a big problem like MEF has been focusing on, and for example, we were involved in a POC these last few days that connected 4 different service providers from the United States through Europe to South Africa, turning up a service, understanding the quality of each of the links, where the issues might have been. We were able to do that and turn it up in an hour or 2 when we first got together, instead of something that historically might have taken months. So that ability to bring a service to market much more quickly is really valuable. And once that reaches the market on a larger scale, I think it's going to unlock a lot of other opportunity for service providers, enable them to get to revenue much more quickly, helps the whole process.
Of course, when I ask a question like this, like what can MEF do? MEF is you, and it's you. And it's like the old story of the railroads when they were built across the United States. They had these railroad crews, and whoever could cook got to be the cook. And if somebody complained about the food, they got to be the cook. So, need something done, let's step up and do it. But I'm really interested in how you think as an industry community and ecosystem, can do better and accelerate this process and make you more successful in the journey as well as at the end point. So all right, so Bart, what do you say?
Yeah, so I like the way you just described the interface that I hadn't looked like that before, like network, service, and business transformation in the 3 programs. I think MEF has done a tremendous job in putting down this LSO framework, and I'm very excited to see the adoption rate now in 1 year time already, looking at the POCs upstairs. One thing as an industry or as a MEF community, maybe we could try to develop in parallel is just in my previous remark, it's in the end, the network transformation is an organizational transformation. So is there a way in which the MEF community could share best practices in a more structured way in terms of how do you actually do this? How do you get it done? And then of course the certification program is a very important building block in such an approach, but maybe we could make that more structured and more explicit in terms of just sharing experiences and understanding how it's done and learning from each other's mistakes along the way. That would be great, I would say.
And that has to be done in a safe environment so you can share your mistakes without being vilified for it.
Exactly.
And without it making all the papers.
Exactly.
Hope we're friends with the press, but certain things we don't want to get out there too much because they're really helpful learning experiences, but in the short-term focus, people look at that and they'll glom onto something like that. We don't ever want that to happen. So, David Hughes, your thoughts?
Well, just to kind of wrap up, I think everybody brought a lot of good opportunities, and I would agree that the biggest contribution MEF has is actually creating a community so that we can have some sort of common dialogue and sort out our communication problems and keep those bilateral agreements in play as we move forward, because it's just going to get more and more complicated. Specifically, if I was going to say something, I would say maybe more in the area of trust and identity management and how that kind of works between carriers. Like, how does blockchain sort of work into this? How do we know that this user is who they say they are as they consume these services? Now, I know there's some things that are done about that, but maybe that might be an area where there's opportunity to develop more fully.
That question came up at one of the POCs. There's a blockchain POC with Colt and Zeta networks, in which they're really creating a marketplace, a prototype of a marketplace for procuring services. The little sort of flaw in is you have to register to get into the marketplace with a certificate There's no one that issues those certificates that's a trusted, neutral third party to do that today. Maybe we can get a discussion going about how we make something like that happen.
Exactly, because you got to trust somebody, and right now, trust is a big problem.
It's a very big problem. I would like to thank the panelists and ask you to join me in thanking them for a stimulating discussion.